I will call the November 17th meeting of the Hamilton Planning Board to order. I'm Brian Stein, the chair. Before I get into our agenda, I just want to take a roll call of the members that are here tonight. Just say your name and I, please, when I call you. Rick Mitchell.
You're muted. Rick.
Sorry, you're muted.
Aye. Rick
Marnie.
Mitchell.
Marnie.
Marnie Crouch, aye.
Corey.
Corey Beaulieu, aye.
Dan.
Dan Ham, aye.
Bill.
Bill Wheaton, aye.
And again, Brian Stein is here. I think that's all of us for now. So on our agenda tonight, we have a request to modify site plan review special permit from Tregworth Companies LLC for 59 and 63 Willow Street. They were here at a previous meeting recently, and this is a continuation from that, given the minor design changes they'd like to make to the building. We also have a preliminary review for 133 Essex Street, potential senior housing special permit. We have an A&R request on the Britton property at 466 Highland Street. We may be talking about a potential bylaw language that we've been discussing for the last number of meetings, and other board business and minutes. So given we've got a number of things on tonight, I'm not sure if the engineer is here for the A&R request for Highland Street. I think that's a fairly simple one, and we can get that out of the way. If not, we can move on to Willow Street. Do you know who's representing Britton's tonight, Peter or Patrick?
I do not.
Okay. All right. Well, since no one's chimed in on that, let's go to Willow Street and hear that first. So, Dave, were you gonna present this tonight?
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you guys again. I'm going to share my screen here. So just to recap, when we were here at the last meeting, I think it was October 20th, we were seeking minor modification as we developed our plans for Willow Street. And walk through the floor plans and the elevations and some of the reasoning why we've been just developing these drawings and how we've developed them. The planning board approved the floor plan changes, and we agreed to continue to develop some detailing of the elevations, which we've done, and Aaron West is joining me tonight. So we'd like to show you these elevations. I think the first piece of news, though, I have is that we've been notified that we did get an award for the CSHI program through Department of Housing and Community Development, which is fantastic and a huge boost to our momentum, which we're excited about. And so we are just continuing to develop and the design, working with our contractor hand in hand, working and advancing the passive house standards throughout the design, and are just looking forward to keeping this moving. And so we would really appreciate the approval tonight so that we can continue to develop this building and keep it moving. So with that, I will switch it over here. Sorry. There we go. So I just, again, did sort of a before and after, and I can sort of zoom in on these as needed, of each of the elevations that we developed. We've been adding detail. We did add a little bit of shading here just to sort of one of the hard parts about the elevations was that it was hard to tell what was in front of what. So we did add some shading to help with that. This is the north elevation on the top. You can see, I'm going to try and go into full screen mode. Let's see if this works. Can you all see this again still?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So on the top is the October 20th elevation that we showed. We've been continuing to develop. A couple changes you'll see is that we talked to our window manufacturer. These are triple pane passive house windows, and we are able to do a grid within the glass to give a little bit more of a traditional feel to the building. We've just tightened up a little bit more of the detailing around the banding and materials. This elevation hasn't changed as much as some of the others. This elevation probably changed the most, I would say. One of the comments we got was on October 20th was that this felt a little too hotelish, which I think we agreed with, kind of similar type of rhythm. And so what we did was we really broke up the window patterning. We also reintroduced sort of the change in material at what was the bump out. We've sort of lined up some of the windows as well on the commercial floor. We also added a little canopy here at the entry to sort of signal, it's hard to see, but you can see some signage there as well, which just says Willow Street at the moment, which just will signal to folks, along with obviously the site plan and the site lighting, where the main entry is. So I think those are the changes. We also added the corbels back here, down in this corner underneath the bump outs. And you can again see the change in the window as well. Not a whole lot of changes here, just some shadowing to help capture the depth. Obviously the windows again. And then you've got the carport down here, which is in shade. And I would say not a tremendous amount of changes here either. And just windows and some tightening up of some materials and some of the porches. Perspectives, this really shows the facade that changed. I think it's a vast improvement. Happy to get your input as well. And then coming in from the driveway, as you see the building, and then from the south facade underneath the carport. I think as I talked about at the last meeting, we won't really select material colors yet for a little while, but that'll be one of the next stages as we further the design. So that's what I have. Happy to take any questions, comments, thoughts. And we appreciate the time on a busy night.
I had one comment, and it's really, I think, a request for a clarification. I think this is an excellent project, so I don't want anyone to misconstrue these comments. But I noticed on your elevation that the height of this building is 37 feet 5 and 5.5 inches. And I went back to the RFP and I reviewed the plans that were amended in December of 2019. And it appeared to me that at that time, the height of the building was 35 feet 8 inches. And so as you're aware, the height limitation on our buildings in this in town is 35 feet. Now, there's a definition, so there's some wiggle room with respect to that. So I'm pointing this out just so that you can take a look at that. And if I'm off the wall, I'm off the wall. But it's something that the neighbors may bring up, and you wouldn't want to start construction and then have to switch gears because there was some discrepancy between the plans that the planning board approved in the site plan review and what you're attempting to build. So that is my only comment. And then I just had one question, and this is relative to the Affordable Housing Trust as well. I am chairman of the Affordable Housing Trust. I know you were seeking 1.7 million from the DCHD, and I wondered if that was the amount of the award that you got.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Congratulations. That's really
Thank
good
you.
work.
And I know I'm due back to the Affordable Housing Trust to give an update. So,
Right, we'll
uh,
invite you. We'll invite you. Our meeting is tomorrow, but we'll invite you to one of our meetings.
I'm happy
You
to. Yeah,
can review
happy to
that.
jump
But
in.
we're very excited about this project. So as I said, do not misconstrue, what I'm.
No, thank you for the heads up. We'll
What
check. I
I'm
mean,
giving, there may be a simple explanation, but
Yeah.
I noticed it at the last meeting and I went back and I found the definitions in our bylaws and I looked at the plans and I just wanted to bring that to your attention because that's something that the neighbors, if they were to discover it, might make an issue of it. You don't want to get too far ahead in your plans if there has to be a slight amendment.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that. So we'll triple check. Aaron, I don't know if you had any thoughts on it. I think it may be the definition of where you measure height from, but
Yeah, it is in our bylaws. So, you can check that. And I, as I said, there may be a simple explanation. I just, was unable to discern what that might be.
okay.
And I think typically, the height is measured from mid of peak because it's a gabled roof.
Right, I'm just suggesting that you
Okay.
double check that.
Well, yeah,
We'll double check it.
I mean, can you say right now that it hasn't changed from the original drawings, the overall?
That was not our intent. So we matched the drawings that were approved. So if something went awry, we'll fix it. But it was not our intention, nor are we asking for an approval to change the height.
Right, and I couldn't tell from the plans, where I saw a 35-foot, 8-inch height, whether that was measured in accordance with the definition in our bylaw. So it's really, I'm not trying to throw a monkey wrench in anything, but rather you understand it now than after you've broken ground and finalized all your plans.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
appreciate
either way, I mean, the previous plans and this one don't exceed the definition of our height restriction from the midpoint of the roof. But,
Well, that's the question.
well, it doesn't. But the question that I have now is, did the overall height change? That, from what you had before to what there is now? That's my question.
The answer is no, not intentionally. So but if we, in doing it, have unintentionally done something, we're going to check and figure out what's going on. So
Okay.
There was no intention to change the height from what was approved. We didn't ask it. We didn't intend to do it. And if we did it, we'll go back and triple check.
And I
Brian,
really didn't
Brian,
intend to
the height-
suggest
one
that you
sec,
did
Marty.
that intentionally.
Bill, go ahead.
The height limit in town is higher than that.
35 feet.
Okay, well then this is, there are two issues
to
here.
the
One is whether
midpoint
it's
of the
different
roof.
between the two plans and the other is whether it's in violation of the town height limit.
Right, at 35 feet to the midpoint of the roof. And then, again, the question is more, is it higher than what was on the original plan?
Yeah. We'll check.
Two
We'll find
points
out.
to clarify.
So
Yeah. And if we need to come back, we'll come back. But otherwise we will,
Or we can, unless there are other objections, we can approve it with the stipulation that it has to meet the height limitations approved in the original site plan review approval.
Yeah, are there any comments on the changes that were made?
I'm very happy to see the window treatment. Good job, good window company, whoever it was.
I think it looks good.
Yeah, I agree. I think the breaking up of those facades adds tremendously.
So I think Mike, it says definitely looks better. Still not loving that ridge. I think the issue that we have if we start changing I think what you're talking about, Mike, is the change in the ridge from one section to another, whether you can get some variation in that. And that really starts to change how all the roofs come together. And the more we tried to tinker with it, the more it just blew up the whole design. And so we've really stuck with what was approved. So thank you for that, Ron. Just wanted to address that.
So,
Can I chime in?
Yes.
So I appreciate what you
Can
just
you
said.
identify yourself, please, and your address?
Yes, Mike Palazola. So my question on the ridge was more just it's so linear. And when you look at one of the other elevations where you see the gables on there, it just breaks it up. I was just wondering if there was an idea on potentially doing something like that, just adding some more character to that long ridge, either with a gable or, I don't want to say an eyebrow, but Brian would probably have 50 ideas on what to do there, but just something to break up that long, flat surface.
I see. So you're not necessarily saying change the ridge line height. You're saying figure out some other decorative element.
Yeah, I mean, it could be something that could be a positive for the tenants inside as well.
Yeah, I think what I would ask is if I would ask the planning board to approve as is. I think we'll continue to, I'm happy to continue to look at it. But I would very much like to keep our designers going and not hold off on another meeting respectfully. So again, Mike, I'm happy to take a look at that. But if we can get this approved, I think hopefully we've shown a willingness to take feedback and take a shot at it. I might have misinterpreted your comment previously.
so Brian, I'm going to make a motion that the planning board approve the site plan amendment contingent on the height meeting its original approval under site plan review of the planning board.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
A comment. Let me suggest you characterize that as a minor amendment,
Okay.
because if it's a major amendment, it then has to be the subject of a.
No, I understand the difference.
Thanks.
So I'll make the motion again that we approve the minor amendment to the site plan review approved by the planning board contingent upon the roof line meeting the original height specified in our previous approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Dan,
Dan Ham, aye.
Lori,
Corey, aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Marnie,
Marnie Crouch, aye.
Rick,
Rick Mitchell, aye.
Brian Stein, aye. I think that's all of us.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
Great, yeah.
We will check the height for sure. We appreciate that. And we'll continue to keep the board and Affordable Housing Trust updated as we go on just drawing development and
Okay.
certainly with Patrick as well.
Yeah, as soon as you can on that height, that'd be great.
Yeah,
So
no,
we can
we'll look at it.
Put that to bed and
Sounds good.
Again,
we
I
will
have
get
to
back you.
reiterate, it may actually be something very simple,
Yeah,
and
no,
it's just something that eluded me, so.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the heads
creative
up, and I think we probably have the answer. So, but we'll go back and do some measurements to make sure.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
all. Have a great night.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Aaron.
Good night.
So Brian,
Yep.
regarding the A&R,
Yep.
Charlie Weir is here for Meridian if you want to recognize him.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think we can, that'll be a fairly quick one so we can get that out of the way before we get to the senior housing project. So, Charlie, you want to explain what we're doing?
He's subdividing off a 4-acre parcel to sell off. I don't know what to say more than that, but it's just it has the required frontage. It meets all the zoning. It's a section of the farm which is not under the conservation restriction.
Right.
This
That's right.
butts up against, this butts up against the
Canterbrook.
Canterbrook, right?
That's correct.
There was another A&R that we approved, but that was off of Highland just recently, right?
Yeah. There's actually been a couple in the last few years. One was on Peter's on his home lot, where he was actually grabbing one of the paddocks that was on the farm and making that part of his lot. The other one, there's two other lots off of, as you mentioned, off of what's the name of that street over there? Highlands. There's two lots off of Highland, and I actually think it was about 2 years ago that was done. I know time flies. It does seem like it was yesterday, but yeah, that was done relatively recently. That's correct.
Yeah, the only question I had was whether that lot was subject to the conservation restriction, because it seems that conservation restriction was, it involved quite a bit of land. So, but if you say it wasn't, I was just curious as to.
Yeah, no, the conservation restriction does cover almost the entirety of the entirety of the farm. Not the entirety, but a major part of it. This 4 acres was set aside and is not covered under the restriction.
Any other questions? Okay.
Any plans for that land?
What's that?
I'm not really authorized to talk about that.
Okay.
If Peter was here, I would, but no, I'm at this point, he's subdividing it off. Like I said, I can't speak to that.
Okay. Anything else from the board? Anything from the public? Somebody want to make a motion?
Make a motion, we approve the Form A on Asbury Street for Peter Britton.
I second it.
Any discussion? All right. Again, roll call vote. Dan,
Dan Ham, aye.
Bill,
Bill Wheaton, aye.
Corey,
Corey Bowley, aye.
Marnie,
Marnie Crouch, aye.
Rick,
Rick Mitchell, aye.
and Brian Stein, aye. All right. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to 133 Essex Street. This is a preliminary review for potential senior housing project and special permit, essentially on the corner of Essex Street and Tobacco Road. That is in the R1B zoning district. Again, most of these larger special permits, developers come before us with a preliminary plan to ask for, again, general comments from the planning board before they get into, large scale plans and details and so forth. So with that being said, Jill or Larry, I don't know which one of you is going to lead, but if you could walk us through what you're thinking, that would be great.
Hey, Brian, just to follow up and clarify on that, just so the people who are watching understand, Larry has not submitted an application.
Right.
This is just a preliminary walkthrough of the proposed plan to gather comments before submitting an official.
Yeah. I think we typically call it a pre-application conference.
And to that effect, when it becomes, or if it does become a formal application, there will be the formal notification process for abutters and those that live up to 300 feet away. But again, that's based on a formal application, and this is a preliminary application that does not require that.
And Patrick, if I could add to that, this is Larry Smith. When we get to that point, we will also do a community outreach meeting as well to educate the public on what our plans are.
Thank you.
Would you like us to start, Rick? I'm sorry, Brian, would you like us to start?
Yes, please.
Great, great. So for those who don't know me or our company, my name is Larry Smith, and we're real estate developers on the North Shore of Boston, specialized in senior housing. We're happy to say we have a community being built in Hamilton today called the Village of Canterbrook Farms, about 4.5 miles from this particular site. So anybody on the call that wants to see some of our work is more than welcome to come to the Village of Canterbrook Farms, see the model home. So as you mentioned, this is very preliminary. We have the property under agreement with the Rich family. We've been working with them for a few months, and we're going through a due diligence period currently to find out what this all entails. I think we have a good idea from a process standpoint, but we're here today to get feedback from the planning board. I'm going to let Jill take over in a minute with a lot of the details to talk about the benefits to the town of Hamilton, which there are many, many financial benefits, along with intrinsic benefits to the town. But in addition to that, really just here to hear feedback, but also please understand that this is a pretty expensive undertaking, mostly because of the type of land that it is. We're going to preserve the farmland the way it is our plan today. So we're going to build up on a wooded hill, and that wooded hill is solid ledge the entire way up. So that makes this real estate development very, very difficult. We have a lot of experience with ledge removal at 2 of our sites in Gloucester. But in general, please understand that this is a major undertaking, and there's a very large affordable housing component to it as well. So having said that, I'll let Jill take over and kind of explain the benefits to the town and the legal process that we are planning to go through. Thanks, Jill.
Thanks, Larry. Good evening, Jill Mann, legal counsel for Canterbrook. And I just wanted to say hello. I appreciate everybody being present on this Zoom call. And as was stated, this is a pre-application hearing in connection with a project that we hope to undertake at 133 Essex Street for the purposes of developing a senior housing development in compliance with section 8.2 of Hamilton zoning bylaw. Also with Larry tonight is Julie Dickinson, who's also a member of the development team, and Charlie Ware as well, who is the site design engineer for this particular project. I know most of the board members know us from Canterbrook and other projects as well. What we really wanted to do was to go through the plan just to show you what we're trying to accomplish. I know that there's been a few developers over the years who have attempted to develop the site. Our goal is to develop it in a very similar manner to how we developed Canterbrook, which is a very responsible manner. We plan on putting in only senior housing, and we are going to do a design that's a little bit different architecturally, and we'll offer different places that the board members and even abutters can go. And while I say abutters, I do want to tell this board that before we actually come back to you with a special permit application, we do intend to reach out to the abutters and have an abutter meeting. Larry's preference is to always meet the abutters, understand their concerns, and to try and address them in our application filing versus trying to do it during the meeting. So that will do a lot of things. It avoids a lot of conflict during the meetings, and it allows us to proceed in a very smooth fashion for the board. If it would be possible, Mr. Effick, could I share my screen just to show them that plan? I'm gonna.
Muted, Patrick.
The share screen command is activated, so go right ahead.
Okay. Here we go. Can everybody see the plan?
Yep.
You can.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's start out by saying, again, this is 133 Essex Street. The property is located on the corner of Essex and Chabaco. The property currently is used as farmland. So the entire open space that you see in this front portion is maintained and farmed. The intention is to, as you can see from where the development area is to allow that farm to remain. You know, that is one of the building design and requirements, I shouldn't say requirements, desires of the senior housing bylaw to try and allow the rural character to be maintained, to minimize the disturbance of the community. And that's what we plan to do with this particular development. As you can see, our entrance is off of Chabaco. Just for summary purposes, it's a 66-acre parcel of land. It's located in the R1B zoning district, so we are able to develop it. There are some overlay districts, but our development portion is outside of the overlay districts. And so it's far away also from the various wetland areas, which we are in the process of flagging and will be filing an ANRAD in the near future. But these are the wetlands here. We do have a, if you will, a draft wetland line. I think that's the best way to say it, right, Charlie? We had gotten that information from prior developers who'd come through. We are having our own wetland expert go out, they will hang flags, and then we'll file for the ANRAD so that we can get our own order from the Hamilton Conservation Commission. However, those areas as identified are fairly representative. As a result of doing this work, we were able to determine that the amount of buildable acres are 38 acres. As you know, that's how we determine what our base density is. With regard to this project, while we know base density, the board is able to grant the right to do 2 times whatever the developable area is. Our goal is to develop 50 units, which is actually under the development standards, the maximum that we actually can in fact undertake. We did do a full compliance check. And by that, I mean, we ensured that we did not meet the limits. So as you know, under your bylaw, we're required to make sure that there aren't more than 100 total senior housing units. There are only 36. It would be Patton in Canterbrook. We're also required to demonstrate that we are at least 3/4 of a mile away in the entire circumference of the property, away from the nearest senior housing development. And we are far outside of that a 1 mile radius from the entire property. I did that math and we'll submit it as part of that senior housing project, but I figure I would just give you a summary. So we did confirm that it was in fact an eligible location. As far as the roadway, we preferred to do this looped roadway instead of trying to do, you know, a hammerhead or a cul-de-sac. We thought that this was a better format to be able to have people flow through and flow out, and that's what you see presently. We are in the process of completing our due diligence, which means we're still doing some groundwater testing, but we're fairly confident that the areas that we show presently are able to receive, you know, soil, septic systems. The soils are sufficient in this area, and you can see an area back here. And we are even going to investigate potentially areas up in this area. The reason for the discrete areas for septic system is, whether the board knows or I don't know, this entire area is ledge. It is a very difficult site to permit. It is going to require a tremendous amount of work and a lot of site cost, which is why we thought it would be best to come in for an informal, because the planning process and the engineering process is even going to be expensive to get through for us. This particular property, I'm going to go through some of the other design elements, but this particular property is beleaguered by trespassing. And the owner is a bit concerned because there are sometimes large groups of people who trespass through it, and they become a little leery of that. We don't intend to prohibit that when and if Larry Smith develops the property and in fact intends to create a trail that would be open to the public. And that's what you see. It would be a great trail. It would meander around the back of the property, and then it connects. Actually, I'm trying to get the plan to move up. I can't get my plan to move. I don't know why, but it meanders off the property down to where Chabaco Forest is. So it actually accesses some of the trails that are to the south of this particular property. One of the really great things about this site is its location and the fact that we're able to keep that farmland and preserve it. We really are far away from the traveled path that is Essex Street. And we've tried to locate the homes back so that we can design and create a very attractive landscaped area when we come back. And when we submit our application plans as required, we'll have a landscape architect showing all of the landscaping, the front preservation of land. In addition to that, we did take into account the building requirements. So, you need to have a mix of units. I realize you can't tell if we did a mix of units here, but we will, just like Larry had done with the Canterbrook, we'll show, a varied size of units. They aren't going to be standard cookie cutter. You're going to show different units throughout, and the architecture even varies somewhat throughout, depending on where the properties lie. Every one of the units is going to be a 2-bedroom, 2-car garage. They'll have 2.5 baths. For the most part, the master will be on the first floor, which for senior housing is important, if not necessary. And that will be part of the design of these particular units as well. So Larry spoke to some of the benefits. Some of the benefits are intrinsic, obviously, just the fact that we're creating senior housing, which is in high demand, as evidenced by the fact of the sale rate at Canterbrook. But some of the other benefits are that we are going to provide an affordable housing payment. I know this board is more than familiar with the DCHD policy that does not allow us to limit it to 55 and older and no one under 18. So we understand that the payment will be due and payable. And depending on the number of units we get, the payment would be north of $1 million. We understand that it's 3 times the AMI. And the AMI for Hamilton for a 2-bedroom, which is what we're limited to right now, is $77,000. So for every affordable unit we would be required to provide, we would have to provide to the board somewhere around $225,000, $230,000. And we recognize that, and it has been worked into our pro forma. Some of the other benefits, clearly, the board again knows it because they've approved. This is not the first approval of a senior housing. We provide all the tax revenue without any of the associated large drains on tax, on the town's tax base. There'll be no school age drain, and the roadway is going to be maintained privately by the condominium association. Again, I hate to keep doing this, but we'll do a very similar style to what we had done at Canterbrook, because I was involved in that one, and that's how we did the condominium, with the condominium being responsible for the road, for the maintenance, for the stormwater, and for the common septic that we will have. Some of the other tremendous benefits, as I had noted before, was the trail. We're going to finally legitimize the use of the property for purposes of walking trails. In addition, we will have tremendous one-time fees. So the building permit fees will probably be somewhere around $325,000, again, depending at the time, construction costs and the number of units approved. There will be excise tax revenue that will be recurring, along with the tax revenues that will be generated. And the tax revenues generated will be, somewhere around, it's always a guess, somewhere around $680,000 to $700,000 a year just for this property. Basically, as far as the development standards, Charlie has been focusing on making sure that he can provide the necessary buffers. You have to have the perimeters and all of the distance with regard to the zoning bylaw, in addition to having 25-foot distance between each of the units. And some of the units may appear to be a little closer. Again, this was simply a concept plan. We recognize the requirement and will honor that. And as with all of the other requirements, we will provide the landscape plan around the front of the units. I think I gave you a pretty long-winded presentation. I do want you to know, though, before we even came here, we thought it would be a good idea to meet with the department heads because we wanted to talk to the fire department, the DPW, the Board of Health. We wanted to make sure that we did our due diligence and just didn't pop in on you and not know some of the, if you will, hidden issues with the property. And we had great conversations with all of those departments, and all of which really had nothing negative to say about the site. You know, the typical questions were, you know, are you going to put hydrants in? Of course we are. We're going to make sure that the water will provide water. We'll do that. And we also, you know, have a traffic person who will come out and do the traffic assessment when the time comes as well. And when we had our conversations with the water department, there were some questions relative to whether or not the town could use some portions of the property to put in a town well. That's still being investigated by them. And Larry has basically said, look, if you can put in a well somewhere in this area, which does not impact the development area, of course, I mean, this area really wouldn't be available for it because of its ledge, of its consistency with being ledged throughout. And I think I probably have hit all of the high points and put most of you to sleep, right? If there's something you'd like to ask us about the property, we'd love to talk about it. We're really excited about this.
Great. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Mr. Stein.
Does the board have any general questions?
I had a question about the farmland preservation.
Sure.
And I'm wondering what type of legal mechanism you intend to use to ensure that that farmland is preserved. I don't know if you intend a long-term lease with the existing farmers, if you will, whether that will be preserved in perpetuity, or what are the thoughts on that?
Sure. Thanks, Ms. Crouch. We actually have begun to engage the person who owns the farm. That has been a long-standing relationship with the current owner and the farm owner. And they presently only have a license, and we are more than willing to memorialize it. It really depends on what the farm owner wants. But we're willing to commit the land. It's open space. We're willing to commit it to farmland. But we haven't had enough negotiations with that entity to tell you exactly how it will be. But that is something that Mr. Smith very much wants to preserve.
I mean, will it be either way permanently protected open space, right? That can be used for farming and other recreation. Okay.
Exactly. So if the town so wanted, we could. I don't know that we can actually preserve it as open space under the open space requirements. I think we have to do it as agricultural, and which is what Ms. Crouch had just stated. But either way, it would be either open space or it'd be farmland. But under no circumstances is any of this land going to be used as development land for the purposes of this project.
Is there a plan for any kind of community building, or, you know, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah. We actually don't. Larry typically does not have, if you will, for lack of a better term, like a common room or you know, one of those. He doesn't usually do that. I don't. In these types of developments, I don't think they're well received. Larry, can you answer that?
I can. Most condominium plus 55 communities that we've built, we've gotten pretty consistent feedback from the owners of the units that they do not want a community room or a pool or anything like that, because it just adds to the expense. But more importantly, the units that we build are usually big enough that, you know, at an average of about 2,200 square feet, there's enough room to do typical gatherings and events within someone's house for 10, 12, 15, 16 people. So the feedback we consistently got is they're not well received, and it's something we never really built for that reason.
Okay.
So comment on the trails, it's great that you're preserving those. And I'd like to see, and I don't see it on the plan, is some sort of parking or people, and I'd suggest you guys take a look at like Sagamore Hill parking, something along those lines where people can pull off into a gravel lot or whatever so they can access those trails.
You know, it'd be a great area, probably would be right around here so that people can feel comfortable. Sometimes people don't like, we do
Oh,
have.
no,
free
yeah,
parking,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
Right
That-
here.
That's what I was thinking.
I think
So
that
the
makes
oth-
sense.
So the other concern that I know we'll run into in the hearings, and I have as well, is the water usage. Because we're perennially in, what's the word I want?
Drought.
Drought.
Drought, yes. So some of the things we want to think about is the plumbing systems that are there. I don't know if there's a possibility at looking of catching the rain and into cisterns and using those for watering, or somehow reusing that. But I know I'd like to see some sort of advanced thinking about minimizing water usage and retaining any water that might fall on the site, as well as minimizing agricultural use, ornamental agriculture.
I understand. Yeah, we absolutely will. And we did have a conversation with the water department about that. And they basically said we would be fine with regard to the water withdrawal permit. But I do appreciate the fact that we need to be mindful of water conservation requirements, and even if they aren't requirements, desires. And we most certainly will look into that because we do take roof runoff. And typically we'll either infiltrate, and then we can have Charlie look into the potential to do something else. And we can agree to use, the drought tolerant plants, not have huge expanses of grass that can't be, that needs high amount of water, because there's all kinds of grasses that you can use that are drought tolerant. And we absolutely would be prepared to present during the public hearing process as to how we've managed that water conservation.
Great, because I know the general public will be asking that question.
Yep.
One last question, on the trails, how will those be maintained? Will that be the responsibility of the condo association, or how does that work?
So, Larry,
Yeah, it will be the responsibility of the condo association.
I think we prefer that too, Mr. Mitchell, because then, we don't have people coming out there that we don't know. So we have condominium association going out, because we're going to be responsible. If there's a violation, it falls on the people. Not to mention, we truly would prefer it if the trails weren't used, at 4 a.m. So we'll have some limits, people take their dogs on the trails, that's fine, but we'll have a requirement they clean up after them. So I think it is preferable for the condominium association to have in place its own maintenance.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
One other issue with respect to the trails, and I'm sorry I don't have a real answer on this. I don't know how many equestrians ride in that general area, but I don't know if you have given any thought to the use of this trail by equestrians. And so I just bring that to your attention. I confess I just don't know how many small barns are in that area, or how many people ride around Chabaco Lake, if at all. But I throw it out because they're, as you know,
A lot of
Canterbrook was a stable at one time, for a long time.
A very, very long time.
Yeah.
You know what I'll do, Ms. Crouch? I will ask the current owner, because they had told us about people walking, but they never really made mention of any equestrian use. But I'll look into it, and then we can have conversations about how that works, with a trail that's very small when it's a mix of horse and human. So I don't know how that'll work, but we'll investigate it and be prepared.
Larry, we've spent some time out there recently, and I don't think it's being used by equestrians at all right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we saw a number of mountain bikes, a lot of hikers. I would imagine in the winter there's cross-country skiers. But
No.
we did not see any horses at all.
That area is sort of cut off from the main equestrian trails in town. So I would surmise that it isn't used by equestrians, but it's a consideration. There might be some.
Yep, we'll take it. We'll look into that.
There's a couple.
Any other board comments? Any comments from the public in attendance?
So, hi, I'm Kathy Rich Duval. I actually am the owner of the property. And in answer to Ms. Crouch's question, to my knowledge, and my family has owned this property since the mid-50s, there has never or hardly ever been any equestrian usage. The trails that are really not supposed to be trails are just basically people that are walking their dogs and some bikers and so forth. But in my years of going to the property, I've never seen a horse on the trails. They're very small. So that's basically it. Sorry.
No,
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you. Any other comments? Just one quick one I have, and it's just hard to excuse me, hard to tell, but as you're coming down the driveway to Tobacco, no, excuse me. Just want to make sure we orient it so there's not, headlights shining into people's houses across the street. Things like that I know will come up at some point.
That's a good point. We'll make sure when we orient the driveway that we aren't intrusive.
All right, Larry, are you looking for any other feedback, or are you?
Well, so our plan is to go away for 90 days and come back with a full-fledged plan. So, as you know, Brian, that's a major undertaking. And you have given us some pretty good feedback. But, we'd like anything you want to say today, including go ahead and do it. We're in favor of this, or, be careful, Larry, we might not want something like this in that part of town. Even though I have to reiterate, in the world of COVID-19 budgets coming up in municipal towns over the next few years, or even into next year, this is going to be generating $650,000 to $680,000 a year in annual taxes, with no impact on the town's bottom line. I'm saying it goes right to the bottom line, no impact on expenses because of all the things Jill mentioned earlier. And I don't know where that money comes from, other than something like this that we believe is good for the town for many, many reasons, as Jill just mentioned. So when you think about it, how many teachers, police officers, firemen's jobs are going to be saved because of a project like this? And I think there's a track record from us working with Hamilton town officials at Canterbrook. We've gotten positive feedback over the months on how we work with the town, our relationships with the abutters, and our relationships with agency heads. And our goal is to just keep that going. And I would ask that maybe some of the board members check with the town tax assessor and kind of find out what has happened to the tax base from that one lot, from what it used to be to what it is today and what it's going to be within the next few months. We will most likely be sold out by the end of 2021 at Canterbrook. There is only 6 units left to sell out of the 23. So things are working out nicely there.
Great.
I had a question about whether the forest on the ledge is dense enough So you would see the development from Essex Street?
We believe you will not see the development from Essex Street
Okay.
because of, Jill, if you could just point to the, where the path is, that is a serious landscape buffer. And that's part of wetlands as well.
I
That's
actually
in-
think I have a, I think I have a, aerial plan that I can show you.
Wow, that's a nice landscape plan.
Impressive.
Right?
That's a steep slope, Larry.
What do you think of that one?
Wow,
That's
you
some-
weren't wrong about the bedrock and the ledge. huh?
Oh, this is the wrong, okay, this is the wrong thing. I'm trying to find, here it is under plans. Let's see if I can find the aerial. I'm trying to get, where the heck did it go? Okay, my adroitness with this stuff is about to show. Okay, aerial. Is this gonna come, this isn't the right one. This is it. Okay,
Oh, so that's over next to Peter and George.
so here it is. This is our property. There's that mile circle I was telling you about. So basically, our project is right off here. Isn't it right here, Larry?
It is, yeah, could you show me Chabaco Road?
Yeah, I'm trying to get to it. I'm telling you.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, there are the fields. You can see the fields.
Right here, right?
Yep.
So look, this is what the quality, it's very heavily treed. I think this is the front of it. I mean, you really can't see the whole thing, but because I'm blowing it up because I really did it for the 1 mile radius, but you can see that it's heavily treed. So I guess to the point, Mr. Wheaton, it really is going to be very difficult to see anything.
I think one of the beauties of this site, with the farmland where it is along 22, it
Mhm.
really preserves the character of the town. But yet you could have a number of units up on that hill without being seen from Essex Street, Route 22. So it's a rare opportunity that you could put 50 units on 66 acres and really not have them seen from the main thoroughfare.
Mhm. I'm impressed. That's a very nice feature of it.
It really is a wonderful feature.
So Larry, or Jill, do you know when you will be submitting a full application?
We're anticipating that it'll come in about February, because
Okay.
we need 90 days just to complete all our due diligence to get to get an ORAD, because we really need to know exactly where the wetlands are. So if you would anticipate receiving an application from us in February, Charlie, you think that's reasonable, right, for you to finish the plans?
Charlie, you're muted.
That's an odd sounding Charlie.
Yeah, it's not me. Yeah, we'll do it. Yeah, February's realistic, sure.
So that's what we're expecting.
Okay.
And as I said, we will have that outreach though, before that time, so that you see something that does have contribution from the neighbors. And we'll have more information about the farmland as well.
And by the way, the outreach we're planning to do as COVID compliant as possible at our Canterbrook site. So we'll probably set up an open tent with some heaters, and depending upon how many people respond to an invitation we're going to send out, we might do it in shifts as well. But we'd rather do it live, yet comply with all the COVID necessities that are required.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of the, concerns and details will come out from all the abutters. I mean, we can see some of the overarching things that, will be benefits to the town in general, but obviously we want, the concerns of the nearby abutters heard and hopefully, taken into account.
Mhm.
That's our goal as well. That's why we want to meet with them face to face and understand and anything we can do, we will do. Anything within reason asked of us, we will do. We always have and always will.
Great. Any other comments?
No, that's good.
Well, I'd just like to say that our family is very excited about this as well, my brothers and I. And Larry and I are going to meet with Ron Vandy next week, just for introductions. I've known Ron since I was a little girl, and he's been, like an added member of our family. And so we want him to be excited about this as well. And him or anyone else who will be farming that land in, the future when Ron, perhaps decides to retire. But we're very excited, and we're excited working with Larry and his team. And so that's why I wanted to join the call.
No, great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Can I just say something as a member of the community and somebody that had just recently lived on Chabaco Road? We were always wondering what would happen, what could potentially happen with that piece of property. And I just think it's awesome what you guys are proposing. If I still lived on Chabaco Road, I would stand behind it 100%, but still living in the community, I would still stand behind it. I think it's a great idea and a great use for that piece of property. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Always appreciate those comments.
All right. We look forward to an application in the coming months. Thank you for being here tonight, and we appreciate it. And stay safe and healthy, everyone.
Thank you.
You
Everybody
too.
have a wonderful Thanksgiving. It's coming fast.
Yeah. We'll see you in a few months, Brian. Thank you very
Thank
much
you
for your
very
support.
much.
Thank
Lots
you.
of hard work already.
Good night.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Oops. All right. Moving on. That went relatively quick, so I think we can do a little bit of discussion on our flexible zoning bylaw. Patrick, you just want to kind of bring us up to date where we are, and I know our goal, short-term goal, is to get our draft out to some developers once we feel it's appropriate to do so. I think we're fairly close, but I know Bill is sent out another matrix, but I think we're close. I just think we need to finalize a couple things.
Yeah, we've been chipping away at preparing a zoning bylaw under the general heading of or nomenclature of flexible zoning bylaw. It's an approach that a number of communities have used. It's something that we've thought would be applicable in Hamilton. We've done a lot of refinement over the last, 3 or 4 months. And I know that the density bonus component of this right now is the biggest push and pull element that we need to balance. So, I know that Bill had prepared a matrix last time. He's provided us with some refinement of that. So I'll turn it over to Bill so he can walk us through his last iteration.
Can I share my screen, Patrick?
Yes, sir.
Let's see if we can. Okay. So the lower panel is the plan of Rick's. In that plan, basically, if you sign on to set aside a minimum of 40%, and you get guaranteed 2 extra, you get guaranteed a density of 2 units per acre, which is quite a big bonus if you're in an RA district. And Actually, is no bonus at all if you're in an R1A district. And then you get extra units for meeting his columns C, D, F, and G. These are criterias in terms of the size of units, their energy efficiency, whether you're making a contribution, and whether there's public access to the open space you're providing. And that quickly gets you up to 6 units, pretty much uniform across all the districts. If you, in addition, set aside another 20%, so you get to a 60% set aside of open space, then you get 3 units per acre across the board. And if you meet all of his criteria, that gets you 7 units, which then he caps at 6. So I'm doing the uncapped version. So in my plan, the bonus that you get for density, okay, depends continuously on how much you set aside. So I have a basic formula, which is you get what you're currently allowed. 2 acres, 2 units per acre, 1.5. And then there's a formula which we could, futz about, which is you get the set aside fraction, 20%, 40%, 60%, times a number which is 2 plus the number of Rick's columns that you meet. And so what I have here is called basic, is you don't do any of Rick's things. All you do is you set aside land, and then you get the set aside fraction, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% times 2, and you add that on to the current. So if you're doing, say, 60% set aside, and you're in a 2 acre, 2 units per acre zone, and you don't do anything else, okay, you get 2 times 0.6, which is 1.2, and you add that to the 2 units, you get 3.2 units of enhanced density as opposed to the current 2. If you meet the 4 criteria that Rick sets out in his columns, then you add those number of columns, which would be 4, and then 4 and 2 is 6, times the set aside fraction, which is 60%, that's 3.6 extra units on top of the 2 you're allowed. So your density goes up to 5.6. And you can see it throughout the matrix. In general, the difference between this and what I did before is you don't get quite as much bonus if you're in an RA as you do in an R1A, but the difference isn't as great as it was before. For out here, it's, you get 4 units total density in an RA as opposed to 5.6 if you're setting aside the maximum. If you're at 40%, it's 1.3 versus 2.8. And that's how it works. You simply take Rick's columns, C, D, F, and G, and if you sign on to all of those criteria, then that's 4 columns. And you add that to 2, which is 6, and multiply by the set aside fraction. And then add that to what you're already allowed to do. That's it.
So you're weighting each column and each criteria the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now there is one thing I wanted to ask Rick about the column G. Okay, this was where it says in your sheet, Rick, that if you make $100,000 contribution, you get an extra unit. Okay, and my question was, did you mean that literally, or did you mean $100,000 contribution for each lot that could have been built? And the reason I mentioned this is if tonight we had a 50 unit development, if I can make $100,000 as a developer, if I can make $100,000 contribution, one contribution of $100,000, and get an extra unit on each of those 50 acres, that's the bargain of a lifetime. Every developer will choose to do that. So that's the question of, did you mean 100,000 per developed unit, or did you mean $100,000 in total? You sort of see what I'm getting at here, Rick?
No, I understand completely. And Bill, this was based on your suggestion probably 2 months ago. So that really would fall back on what you were intending when you made that when you made that suggestion. That's how it got incorporated in there.
Okay, so my thought was that you can buy an extra unit for $100,000 per unit you build, not for a one-time fee of $100,000. You can buy an extra unit. So we'll have to refine that. Now that's not part of my plan here, because I'm giving you more density as you move along this way, the more you set aside. So I haven't really factored in. We have to think about whether the $100,000 is the right amount and what it applies to.
Why don't we we should really probably think about simplifying this. So just for the purposes of trying to get this in a workable format that people can understand, is we could just drop that and then possibly add that as a tweak later.
Yeah, in effect, that's what this matrix has done. I'm really dealing with columns C, D, and F, C, D, E, and F. So, it's not simple, but yours isn't simple either. None of these are very simple. And again, the main difference is that as you set aside more and more land, you get to build, a little more units kind of continuously, as opposed to in this step thing that you have. And then,
well, mine was
we're not quite as generous if the underlying density today is lower as opposed to being higher.
Yeah, mine was not meant to be tied to yours. So your G and H kind of like doesn't make sense there. Mine stopped at 40%, and that's how it was built, with the incentives to get to 60. So get to 6 units per acre. So you're kind of like laying my matrix on top of yours, and it doesn't work from my perspective. The one thing that would be helpful here for illustration purposes, and then it's still missing, is the columns from my density bonus criteria. I don't know how they can be laid in here so people who have no experience with this could read it and understand what's happening.
Oh, yes. If you were trying to present this and we hadn't gone through all these iterations, I'd have to have a sub table here, which is sort of, you get 1 point for each of these things. I'd have to describe them as you describe them. And then you add up the number of points, add it to 2, and multiply it by the set aside fraction. Yes, if you're presenting this to someone, you absolutely have to sort of take the titles or whatever from your columns and describe them as that's how you get an extra.
Yeah, that's the next step here. I think that's what I want to have done before we send it out to the developer, just so it's absolutely clear what it's just looking at the 20, 40, 60%, that's clear enough how that works. And that's why I asked the question earlier about each column, each of Rick's criteria are weighted equally. A, should they be, and B, we just need to make that clear, however it is. However we think is the cleanest, simplest way to do that. It's easy to read for everybody. That's what I want to get to.
I'm going to interject this, and I hope no one takes it the wrong way, but The matrix that's set forth in the senior housing bylaw,
Mm-hmm.
I think is readily understandable. We have 2 senior housing projects and one that looks very promising. And I think that it would be very helpful if we could try and use what we've been discussing and put it in the same format as the senior housing matrix. And if we do that, I think it'll be understandable to developers.
That's an interesting thought.
Because the matrix in the senior housing bylaw, when I read it, I understood it. It's clear as a bell. And, when we try and compare Rick's and Bill's, it's not that clear. And, it may be clear to us, but it requires so much explication. I don't know that it will be clear to all developers, maybe some, but it's unlikely to be clear to the general public without a whole lot of rigmarole. But, the senior housing matrix, I don't know who was responsible for it, but it's quite good.
I think that this is functionally clear. I think verbiage is lacking. Like, public's not going to know what RM columns time set aside. Like, well, they'll have to get names.
I
That's
appreciate
kind of
that.
my point,
But it functions very clearly now, whereas before and in the prior weeks, we've sort of had a, like, what is that again? Like this very straightforward works out, in my opinion anyways, knowing what CDF, E&G are and RM columns are and things like that. So functionally as an equation, I think it's getting really close to something to
All
present.
right, let me look at let's see. Yeah, that's on page 62, the senior matrix.
Yeah, and that's where I actually mine was actually modeled on that matrix. That's where those columns came from, and shows the additions that you get, bonuses that you get if you incorporate the specifics that I
It's interesting, those are all in percentages.
Right, and they're not all weighted equally, if I remember, right?
No,
Yeah.
No, they're not.
No, they appear to be. You just add up the percentages.
Yeah, they're weighted equally.
Yeah. And then you get another bonus for vegetation and stuff like that. Okay, we'll go another round on this. Let me see if it's expressed as a percentage increase in density off of a base. And the base moves between 3 and 1, depending on whether you're, R1, R1B, RA. And it decreases, the base is smaller if you're in RA as opposed to R1A. So it in many ways, it moves
Mm-hmm.
very similar, but it doesn't have you get more if you set aside more feature to it.
Right. And I like that. I think that works. If we can incorporate all, the basic, your basic formula here into that, fairly easy to read format, I think we're good. Because I like that, you gradually, with the formula, whether you set aside 20, 30, 40, 60, whatever percent, you know what you're going to get.
Right.
I like that part of it.
I do too.
The proposed density on total land at the top there, like a 10-acre property, set aside 6 acres. Am I doing the 4.1 on the 10, or am I doing the 4.1 on the remaining 4? Because I think in our bylaw,
you're doing the.
I'm looking at an RA, sorry, RA max.
you're doing it, you're entitled to 4.1 units for the original 10 acres. So that's 41 units.
41 units, right?
Okay, so yeah, that's,
On 4 acres.
but it has to be built on 4 acres. That's
That's right.
Right.
that's maybe the only piece missing in that little section too, for like clarity's sake, is that it's, because I guess I'm still reading it personally, and it's just, again, verbiage, because functionally I think we have a very workable thing, but 4.1 feels like a per acre, but then I'm only allowed to build on 4 acres. So just making sure that we work in the language to.
Yeah, we did that we were the 2 iterations ago. We said this is how many you can build on the total site, as opposed to building on the what is the density that results on just the built portion,
Right.
which can be significantly higher because you're building on less land.
Right. It's the whole, you know.
And I think it's, in a lot of these charts I see in bylaws, there's always footnotes that explain, what each, column or whatever category is. So I think we'll have to do that.
So can I make a suggestion? Bill, it sounds like you're going to go back and try and make this readable for the average citizen who's going to have to vote on this at some point. Can you work with like Patrick or any other people before you send it out in a final version, so that
Sure.
Sure. we can, when we get to something that people have had input into it and there's clarity, so that we don't do this every time we get together and talk about it? That makes sense?
Yes.
Patrick, are you good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I think that we probably would want to take a run through the language of the text again too, just to make sure that we're good with all of that as well. Because it's been a while since we dipped into that.
We were pretty good. I think there was maybe one question we had with some language that Marnie wanted to incorporate, and I forget what it was, but I know we were trying to figure out what it meant. But sure, why not?
Yeah, I think that we were pretty close. We just needed to tie up a few loose ends.
Right. I think I was on version 7. So the last iteration I did, I deleted some language for sure. So I think everybody, and myself included, since it's been probably over a month, needs to read the language too, not just the matrix, and see where we are on that score.
Well, if you could resend that, just so that we all have your latest version, and if you could, and you probably do, but just make sure it's labeled version 7, of the date you send it out, just so we're all working on the same version and date.
What I'll do is I'll send it to Patrick, so there's no
Okay.
issues with that, and I'll do that as soon as I can.
And then maybe Patrick and Bill, when you get something that you think is good, who would be, both Corey and Marnie have expressed the need to be clear and have it reflect something similar to the senior housing bylaw. I'm wondering if one or both of those people could sort of look at it and say, yes, it meets the clarity criteria or not. I want to make sure we get something that's we all can be comfortable with.
I'm happy to look anything over that you want to share in advance.
Yeah, we should definitely. I mean, if it's done right, we might actually be able to roll the senior housing bylaw into it, or roll it, make it one bylaw.
Yeah.
Not that I'm in favor of simplification here.
Oh, One thing at a time, please.
Yeah.
But I see that's an additive fraction is what the senior bylaw is.
Yeah.
It's an additive percentage increase. And it varies the way I think it should. Actually, it should, yeah, all right. So let me see if I can work with that page. And Patrick and I will work on it together and not send you anything until we think it's reasonably straightforward.
Yeah, and then Patrick, maybe you can send it to Corey and Marty and get their feedback too before we all see it.
Sure.
Would that's okay for you, Marty and Corey?
Absolutely. And since I'm the most mathematically challenged person on the planning board, if I can understand it, then I can probably believe that people in town can understand it. I'm much better with words than numbers.
Very good.
Yeah, it's also fine with me.
Great. All right, everybody has their marching orders.
I do notice, Patrick, in the senior bylaw, all of the densities are per developed acre,
Right,
Yes.
not per original acre.
right.
Well, you have to read the definition of developed acre.
Okay,
And that is included in the version of the bylaw that I will be circulating. I included that definition.
Because I forget exactly how that reads, but
I can tell you if you want me to.
yeah, if you have it right there.
I do. Developing,
anything you set aside shall be, land you set aside shall be excluded from developed acreage. So that works just the opposite. If you, okay,
well, the definition of developable acres is at section 8.2.8.
right. No, that's what I'm reading.
Well, we don't have to base our matrix on that. I know you haven't. It's just working out the numbers. I mean, we can, but we don't have to.
Right.
Well,
Consistency is good, though. I mean, if you have that concept in one bylaw, I think that it might be helpful to carry it over into the other.
Yeah, I would agree with Marty here. You don't want to, it's, consistency would be nice.
Yeah, the criteria, the verbal criteria will change it because that was written probably 15 years ago. So some things, I think we want to incorporate some of the things that we kind of agreed on from my original matrix in terms of size and
Yeah, all that's fine. It's just whether you're basing your density on total land or
yep,
land that's not set aside.
yep.
I think it's best to keep it as total buildable land, or, as opposed to wetlands or ponds or things like that. And
Well, now now you're bringing up something that's even different, right?
that's by definition developable. You can't develop a pond.
Correct.
or wetland, right? So
Correct. You're already, any wetland you already have to set aside out of the equation.
So we'll stay with this. We can, this is, we can work with that. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I can come up with a formula that looks pretty much like this.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else on this before we move on?
I thank the board for being patient.
I think so. I don't want to do this, but I do. The numbers that we're getting to because of the equation specific fraction set aside, we're landing on like where at a basic 20%, sorry, a maximum 20%. R1A is the same as a basic 60%, so there's no encouragement to choose the one that actually causes more set aside. I think actually we don't need to necessarily talk about it other than if someone wants to chime in on whether we should lean towards more or less or any specific numbers.
Now what's the problem, Corey?
R1A in a maximum 20% set aside is 3.2, and in a basic 60% set aside is also 3.2. So you have no encouragement to do one or the other. In fact, you can just build it.
That's a good point.
And I only bring it up, and I think we can work on it in our sidebar while we develop the clarity, but just trying out different numbers within that equation that kind of creates more of a consistent upswing left to right, something like that. It happens a couple of times on the chart, not a tremendous amount, but R1B max 20% is also the same as basic 60%. I think it arrived naturally through the set aside fraction and the plus columns just being math. But if there's another number that we could use to just encourage a little bit more sliding scale.
Well, but remember, the two are very different. So 60% basic means you're doing the town a favor by setting aside a lot of land, but then you're not meeting any of the development criteria. Whereas 20% is you're not setting aside as much land, but on the other hand, that's a max. That's a max. So you're making all sorts of other concessions in terms of, the type of unit you're building and everything else. So, maybe that trade-off gets you the same thing. I'm not sure I see a consistency problem there.
Right. It's not something I had considered. When we talk about it and look through the clarity of it, I might do throw a little suggestion out, but if it's not,
when we put this in the right way, that should be clear that 3.2 under 60% basic means you're not doing anything else other than setting aside 60, whereas the 20% max, you're doing a lot else, even though you're only setting aside 20%.
Right.
Right. So that's a trade. Yeah, I get it.
Okay.
All right. We good on this?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Moving on to minutes of October 20th. Any comments?
Marnie?
Questions?
They look great.
Speaking of, I wanted to make an announcement. I'm pretty reticent to do this. Marcy Ricker has been doing homeschooling of her grandkids to the point where that's taken so much energy. She just doesn't feel like she's got the energy left to do our minutes. But I wanted to say a huge thank you to her for having done so many years worth of minutes, so many years worth of meetings with the planning board and other boards. To do minutes, it's a really tedious, usually thankless job, but I wanted to thank her for all the years that she's done it and had such a great attention to detail and actual skills in understanding what we were all talking about.
Okay, I make a motion that the planning board thank Marcy Ricker for all of her years of wonderful service, taking, presenting, and recording our minutes. Somebody want to second that?
I second that motion.
A motion, definitely a motion of thanks. Okay, second. Ryan, take the roll call. Formal motion. Come on, it's a formal. We're just,
A formal thank you is what we're doing, right?
Yes, that's right.
All right, let's do it formally then. All right, Rick Mitchell,
Rick Mitchell, aye.
Bill,
Bill Wheaton, aye.
Dan,
Dan Ham, aye.
Marnie,
Marnie Crouch, aye.
Corey,
Corey Bowley, aye.
and Brian Stein, absolutely aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Marcy.
And Patrick, do we have somebody that can fill her shoes?
I don't have that person yet, but
Can
I have been working on it.
Can I make a suggestion?
You certainly may.
Talk to Mary Alice Cookson.
I have done that. She has provided me with a person that she thinks is interested. I
Okay.
communicated with her, and we're both following up on that. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Great.
Good.
All right, any questions or comments on the 20th minutes?
No.
Are we all good?
I'll just make one note. Before I joined the planning board, I reviewed all the minutes and I noticed that there were a couple instances where there were meetings without minutes. And maybe before Mary Alice departs, we can address that. There were just 2 or 3, I believe, 2 or 3 dates where no minutes had been approved.
How long ago?
Probably within the last 2 years or so.
Yeah. I'll check on that.
I think I sent you an email, Patrick. I could probably find it.
Okay.
It's also possible they weren't posted either.
No, they weren't posted.
Right.
That's, yeah. So they're not posted on the website. They may have been approved. I should be more clear. It's just that they weren't posted.
Okay. Thank you. All right, somebody want to make a motion on the minutes for the 20th?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes on
October 20th.
October 20th.
Rick Mitchell, second it.
Okay, roll call vote. Marnie,
Marnie Crouch, aye.
Dan,
Dan Ham, aye.
Bill,
Bill Wheaton, aye.
Corey,
Corey Bowley, aye.
Rick,
Rick Mitchell, aye.
Brian Stein, aye. It's unanimous. Any other reports, Patrick?
Seems to be frozen.
I think his screen is frozen.
Oh, yeah.
Holding that pose a while.
Yep, he's gone. Well, we'll give him a second to get back up, and if not,
There he is.
There he is.
Nearly
Yeah.
the same pose.
Out for a second. But his project would have us at 85 units. If that is a bylaw that we want to continue, we probably need to think in terms of amending that bylaw and specifically that number.
Right.
I think I missed the first part of your
Yeah.
comment.
He's talking about senior housing.
Senior-
There's a cap
There's a
on
cap.
total units
Oh,
for the entire bylaw, about what, 100?
150.
150. And we'll be at 85 if this happens on Essex Street.
I think it's actually 100.
Really? I thought it was 150.
Yeah, I think it's 100.
Oh, okay.
For total for the town for
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, no, we can certainly talk about that.
But yes, we should definitely check that and then talk about amending it. Hello?
someone wants attention.
Anything else, Patrick? I guess congrats so far are in order for town hall getting its votes at town meeting.
Yeah, that was exciting. The vote will be coming up. I think it's on December
3rd.
3rd. Yeah. So that's not far away.
Yep. No, that's great so far. Anything else?
That's it for me.
Anything from anyone else?
You want a motion?
That would be good.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second?
Bill seconds. Okay. All those in favor? Marnie,
Barney Crouch, aye.
Corey,
Corey Bowley, aye.
Bill,
Bill Wheaton, aye.
Dan,
And am I?
Rick,
Mitchell, aye.
and Brian Stein. Aye. Unanimous. All right. Thank you, everyone.